I want to start with Tucker Carlson. The US president finally, basically publicly wiped him, but he held back a little bit. Do you think something bigger is coming from Trump, particularly after today, where Tucker Carlson said that complete surrender means that now US troops can essentially rape the wives and daughters of those left behind? I don't know if you saw that, but this was his latest just recently.
Unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter if they want. And everyone knows that. And that has been, if there's one consistent lesson of history, it means unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter. Everyone can feel that. That's like the most atavistic instinct there is. And so to avoid that, people will do anything. And so that's why it requires that level of force to get a population subdued to the point of unconditional surrender. That's why. And so in this case, of course, we don't have the ground force necessary. I don't think Americans would voluntarily participate in it. I just don't think we can do that. It would require weapons of mass destruction. It would require presumably nuclear weapons in order to do that. And let's not lie to ourselves. We're moving toward that.
Well, I think it's good. Let me explain. If you think about the battlefield as an information warfare space, right? And there are people who are locked into certain sides, and then there's the big floating middle. And that floating middle shifts around in terms of its opinions. And the goal in this information warfare space is to peel off more of that middle onto your side, right? That's how the battlefield looks. The more extreme and unhinged Tucker Carlson becomes, like when he attacked Chabad last week, every Jew in the world knows, and a lot of non-Jews know, that Chabad is the least political organization on the planet. All they do is humanitarian work, and their theology is that, like, if we all are just better people, that'll bring the Messiah. Like, they're just the sweetest people in the world, and they don't get involved in any politics in the Jewish community at all. And he attacks them for being, so when he does things like this, or saying things about Israeli soldiers, or when he sits on a stage in Saudi Arabia, which according to Open Doors International is one of the worst places on the planet to be a Christian, where on the books, conversion to Christianity brings a death penalty. And even though they don't fulfill that all the time, if a woman converts to Christianity in Saudi Arabia, her children are confiscated from her. That's what they do. Churches are illegal. And he sits on a stage there and says, as a fervent Christian, I feel very comfortable in the seat of Islam. But there are 2 million Christians who are among the most persecuted Christians in the world in Saudi Arabia. So when he does things like this, he's not gaining any new followers. Here's the point I was making about the battlefield. He's not gaining any new followers. The more unhinged he gets, the more he narrows the population of people who take him seriously. And just think of it this way, Aaron. Every time he goes a little too far, there's one more slice of his audience that walks away from him. And he doesn't gain anyone new. There's no one more extreme than him who wasn't on board with him yet, who suddenly is. So I think it's good. I want Tucker to keep going in this direction. He's shrinking his influence. He's shrinking his audience. And Trump, who always has his finger on the pulse of where the middle is. That's how he won. That's how he won in 16. That's how he really won in 20. But that's how he also won in 24.
Anyone.
Right. So I think Tucker Carlson is doing us all a big favor. As he pushes the envelope and pushes the envelope. Let them scream, let them be loud, but they are not gaining influence.
And it's a great point you make in that I would argue that Tucker is far more dangerous than someone like Candace, because Candace has gone completely bat beep crazy, whereas Tucker kind of had that semblance of still kind of being semi-credible. He was on Fox News for a long time. He's just asking questions. He's now completely crossed that line. I wanted to ask you about Megyn Kelly as well, because she shared something from Charlie today and kind of, a post he'd made about the drums of war are beating and trying to frame those thoughts as the exact thoughts that he would have now, given all the circumstances that have changed since Charlie's death. You knew Charlie Kirk almost better than anyone. Do you agree that he would still feel that this was not a just war, or that this action shouldn't have been taken?
Well, I wouldn't say that I knew him better than anyone, but his positions on the Middle East and Israel, I'm definitely... I could say that I'm more qualified than almost anyone to talk about, because the entire substance of my relationship was that Charlie had subject matter experts on every topic that he talked about that he relied on to get good information. And he knew that if he was going to talk about Israel, he should have someone on the ground in Israel who knows the situation, who also understands conservative America First MAGA politics. And that was the relationship. It was a very professional relationship, but it was an ongoing daily texting and talking relationship. And I'll tell you what he would say, because he said it in June. In the June 12-day war, Charlie, in the lead up to it, was in the camp that was opposed to America stepping in and taking action. He was opposed, meaning he was in the same sense that Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson and many others in the America First movement were saying, look, this is Israel's war. Let Israel fight it. America shouldn't get involved. And worrying about getting involved in a regime change war or another Middle Eastern quagmire. Charlie was there, except for one difference where he broke from that other pack, which was, he said this, and he said it multiple times. He said it on Jesse Waters on Fox. He said it on his own show. He said, Donald Trump has earned my trust, and he has earned all of our trust. And therefore, even though I'm worried about this, even though I don't like this, even though I'm afraid of escalation, even though I feel that America should be more focused domestically, yada, 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 the whole litany we know. His pivot was, he said, however, I trust Donald Trump. He's earned our trust that he's not going to make those mistakes. And then when Midnight Hammer happened and all of the doomsday predictions of the Tucker Carlsons of the world, there's going to be a third world war. Russia and China are going to join. Of course, they didn't.
Haven't they been really solid to their good friends?
I love regime? Them. I love them. They're hilarious.
Hello. G, we're under a little bit of pressure. Would you mind sending a little G? I mean,
it's better than that, Aaron. Vladimir Putin, listen to this. On the second day of this war, Vladimir Putin sent a condolence message to the Iranians for the death of Ali Khamenei. In the condolence message, he said that Russia stands committed to our strategic partnership with Iran. Now, what's the problem with that? The strategic partnership with Iran, signed between Russia and Iran, was signed in January 2025, right after Trump was elected, and it is a military and defense strategic partnership, which means that they're supposed to be helping them, and he's not helping them, and he sends a condolence note. Putin cracks me up, but.
Yeah, he also pointed out human rights.
But back to Tucker, when all of those doomsday predictions didn't come true, Charlie came out smelling like a rose, because Charlie said afterwards, he said, listen, I was worried, but Trump was right. We didn't get entangled in a long-term mess. No American soldiers were killed. There was no boots on the ground. There was no spike in oil prices. There was no escalation with Russia and China. And he acknowledged, and what Charlie would be saying now would be the same thing. He'd be saying, I don't like this.
Yeah.
But I trust Trump. I'm sure that's what he'd be saying.
It's so interesting, because for Megyn Kelly to use Charlie Kirk's tweet from however long ago, and it feels very disingenuous when she refuses to call out Candace Owens for completely trying to destroy Erica Kirk, Charlie's widow. It feels tacky and it feels dirty.
Well, that's Megyn. I mean, look, when you look at the three of them, these that you mentioned so far in this discussion, they're not all the same. I would say Tucker is brilliant about messaging. He's one of the best communicators of our generation, and that's why he's so successful. I personally believe, and this is just an observation from watching him closely for many years, I believe this even back when we all liked him when he was on Fox and we didn't know what I've always been bothered by the fact that he appears to me to be someone who is not well read. People who speak that much in public generally quote books that they've read at some point in conversations, especially in long-form conversations. Tucker has a lot of long-form conversations. Listen to him, Aaron. I don't think he's well read, and he often acts surprised when someone brings up a historical fact that to anyone who's a simple student of history is obvious. I believe that Tucker Carlson is not well read and that he's a poser, but he's very smart. Candace Owens is actually not that smart. And therefore, and she marginalizes herself. What I was talking about at the beginning of this conversation about narrowing your audience and not gaining followers, I have no worries about Candace Owens. She's only talking to this bizarre echo chamber and maybe a lot of bots boosting her numbers. I'm not worried about her in the slightest. Megyn Kelly is really just a floating grifter. She's just someone who she sees, look, here's an interesting experiment I did. Matt Gaetz, the former congressman, in the last year or so, suddenly made a sharp turn against Israel. And it came out of nowhere because he was never pro or anti or anything. He never expressed opinions about Israel one way or the other. If he did, they were kind of pro-Israel. And then he suddenly pivots hard against Israel. So I went to his Twitter feed and I looked at all the posts that he put up. And I just simply looked at the engagement numbers on about 100 posts. I spent a couple hours on it. Every post that was anti-Israel or implying something about the Jews had massive engagement. And every other topic that he tweeted about, a fraction. And I said to myself, it's very simple. There is good money to be made online by attacking Israel and by implying that you're edgy and that you're noticing the Jews. So I don't take a lot of this stuff seriously. I took it more seriously before I went to America Fest, actually. I go every year to TPUSA AmFest. That's where I first met Charlie years ago. And at this year's AmFest, I was expecting a more hostile environment because of all this stuff going on. Yeah. And what I found was actually that the people I met, the crowd was actually quite, on board with being not only pro-Israel, but pro-Western civilization. When Tucker Carlson stood on that stage at AmFest this past December and rebuked the audience for criticizing Islam, the crowd was not with him.
Yeah.
So much so that at AmFest, there were about 40 to 50,000 people there. They do polling. And it's pretty significant polling. They're polling tens of thousands of people. And one of the poll questions done at AmFest this year was a multiple choice question asking what you believe is the greatest threat to America. And there was a whole bunch of things on the list: the Chinese Communist Party, immigration, the national debt, the whole litany of threats. The number one threat chosen by the people at AmFest this year was Islam. And so think about the disconnect between where Tucker is and where the crowd is. And when the participants were polled about their view of the U.S.-Israel relationship, over 80% said that they still consider Israel either the number one ally or an ally of the United States. So, we're talking about, I think we have to remember, Aaron, that online world is not necessarily reality.